Thanks, everybody, and welcome to the Banjo Workshop with Adams Collins. I am Adams Collins. I've got my buddy here, Tom Andersen, playing guitar. You might recognize him as a bass player for Arkansas. And we got Tait Kelly on mandolin. So this is a workshop, so we'll be talking about some ideas on banjo and music in general, and it is very crowd participation encouraged. So if you guys have any questions about anything that we're doing up here, please feel free to shout them out at any time. I want to talk a little bit about this goofy instrument. It's kind of a little bit of a puzzle. The 5-string banjo in the bluegrass world. It's tuned to an open G, and you have this funny little drone string on the top of your neck, which is unique to the banjo, different than most stringed instruments. Usually your high string is the lower string physically on the banjo. Good example. The way it's played is a little bit different than how a lot of mandolins or violins or guitars kind of approach how they create melodies on the instrument. It's a little more linear on those instruments. In the banjo world, we kind of are thinking in chords all the time and have to kind of make decisions about how to pull melodies out of these chords. So I'm going to try and demonstrate what I'm talking about. So are there any banjo players in the room? Yes, one. Okay, perfect. And then how about musicians? How many people play instruments in here? Cool, a handful. All right, so I'm just going to rush through a few music basics so we kind of know what we're talking about. In music, Western music, we have an alphabet that we use. It's 7 letters, A through G. And when we play tunes, one of those letters is the key of the tune, and that's considered our home bass note. And in bluegrass, we often use G as our home bass note because the banjo's an open G. And then we go through the alphabet using each one of those letters, and that's how you get your major scale. G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp. Don't worry about the sharp for now. And then G, you're back to G. You might recognize it from the sound of music. It's do, a dear, a female, do. They call that solfege. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Which some people use. A lot of bluegrass and pop musicians, we use numbers. They call it the Nashville number system. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then you can call it 8 or 1. It's the same thing, and then you can go on the next octave. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And so, while you might look at a piano or an instrument and see a bunch of strings and a bunch of frets and feel overwhelmed, it really just comes down to those 7 notes. And oftentimes we use a scale called a pentatonic scale, which is only 5 notes. So it really starts to decrease the number of opportunities for what melodies are created, and you start to hear them and recognize them through ear training, through learning a lot of melodies. You start to see all the patterns. Anyways, I'm getting a little sidetracked from what I'm trying to do. So to demonstrate now, once you kind of learn that you have a major scale and how it works on your instrument, then you can kind of start understanding how we use the major scale to create melodies. And the classic example, the first song that most people learn on the instrument that I usually teach or that anybody teaches is this real banger. It's a real classic tune, and it goes like this. Hot cross buns, hot cross buns, 1 a penny, 2 a penny, hot cross buns. You guys heard that one before? And that's a good example of kind of how to start learning tunes and categorizing tunes in your brain, because it's 4 phrases long. We think of a lot of this music in phrases, a musical sentence, and 3 of those phrases are identical. And what you're doing, you got your major scale, 1, 2, 3. You're starting on that third scale degree, or do, re, mi on mi if you were a solfege person, and you just walk down the scale back to your home bass note. 3, 2, 1. That's your first phrase. Second phrase, identical. 3, 2, 1. And then the third phrase, the tricky one, you start on the home bass note, 1, 1, 1, 1. Then you go up to the next note, 2, 2, 2, 2. Fourth phrase, same as the first two. 3, 2, 1. So that's how cross buns. It's pretty easy to learn on any instrument that you can learn the first 3 notes of a major scale on. Yeah. So if you're learning a fiddle or a guitar or a piano or something, you know, that's kind of where you'd start. You learn 3 notes and you kind of play through those through all those phrases. But on banjo, we have 3 fingers and a finger pick and then a bunch of strings, and our building blocks for banjos are these things called roll patterns, and it has to do with the pick order of you go thumb, index, middle. Like there are basically 3 basic roll patterns. The first one's called a forward roll, where you go T-I-M, thumb, index, middle. Sounds like this. You also have the backward roll, where you go M-I-T, opposite direction. And then you have the mixed roll, or the alternating roll, where you go thumb, index, thumb, index, thumb, middle. You know, those are your basic 3 building blocks, and then everything else is kind of a combination of how you put those together. You have a common roll pattern called the forward reverse roll, where you go forward for 4 notes, T-I-M-T, and then backwards, and you put them together. It sounds really cool, like this. But really, that's just a forward roll and a backward roll. So some people think of it as a separate roll, but okay, before I'm starting to get a little bit lost in the weeds here, but let me demonstrate now how, as banjo players, we take melodies and play them on banjo using rolls. So we've learned, we have an idea of hot cross buns. I'm going to play it on this string, and I'm going to incorporate a forward roll pattern to fill out the rest of the notes. Sound like this. So it's like a bunch of notes that you're playing on the banjo, but really only a few of them are important as the melody, and I think it's kind of like you're always wrestling to figure out where the melody is and how to utilize it, and sometimes it just turns into playing a lot of notes, and that's where we get the reputation of being the most obnoxious guy at the jam session, because we're just speed bagging notes at the same volume all the time. Which, you know, I think is also cool. But, you know, in the study of banjo, in my own practice and teaching, you know, it's like if I'm actually learning a song, I'm trying to find the melody, then figure out where those melody notes are in the banjo, and then puzzle out which roll patterns are going to help emphasize that melody. So I'll do a couple other examples of hot cross buns. We did it in a forward roll. The other one that sounds cool is a mixed roll pattern on hot cross buns. Would sound like this. So yeah. That's kind of the hurdle of banjo playing. It feels a little bit like a science experiment or a math problem. I've found it in my music communities, people usually either gravitate towards guitar or banjo. I've had a lot of students that play guitar for years and kind of like wrestled with it, and then pick up a banjo and it clicked instantly. It's a certain brain type that kind of like really enjoys this kind of pattern playing, yeah, it's a personality type. The stereotypes are somewhat true on some of this stuff. So that's the real basic example of some melodies in a very simple way. And then you can really start branching out by finding them in different parts of the banjo. If I go up into we did this in the lower octave. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, and now up here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. So now I'm going to try it up here in this upper octave, and I'm going to incorporate some. This is a little more advanced, but just in a demonstration world. Utilize some harmony notes and some positioning in the lower part, and I'll still do a forward roll, but just in a different part of the banjo. Cool. Does anybody have any questions about anything so far? Am I just explaining it so well? Oh. Yes.
Okay. I was just going to ask, do you know anything about the history of the banjo? Because I know it came from, Africa, but I don't really know a whole lot.
Next question, please. It is originally a descendant, a relative of African instruments. There's really interesting documentary that Bela Fleck made called Throw Down Your Heart, where he actually travels to Africa and goes into some different communities and villages in different regions and plays with a lot of these traditional African musicians and makes incredible music, and eventually ends up with the place where the original banjo came from. And so it was brought to the United States through slave trade, and then developed. They were making their own instruments with whatever they could, and I don't know. I'm not super well versed in it, but
is that why? I was just wondering, is that why it's so kind of different than the other stringed instruments? That it's just like more Eastern, or a different thought process?
That makes sense to me. I hadn't really thought of that.
As you're talking about,
yeah.
I wonder if that's true.
Yeah. Another question.
So, you do banjo plays the melody in most songs?
It can, yeah. It doesn't always, sometimes. When you're playing in a group, usually one instrument's playing the melody and everybody else is kind of playing backup. Like in that tune that we started off with, we were taking turns playing the melody, and then the other instruments were just playing the chords and accompanying, and then we'd take turns playing the melody. And so, a lot of banjo playing, it's an interesting thing when you study an instrument, or especially banjo. You kind of like a lot of the songs you learn in the beginning are how to play the melody of the tunes. But the reality is, when you play in a group, if you got 4 dudes, or gals, dudettes, you play the melody once every 4 times around. So 75% of the time you're just playing backup. And backup banjo is kind of like, that's a whole nother thing we could talk about, but you're just you're still using rolls, but you try and keep it more simple and kind of stay out of the way. Kind of like a drum set player or something. Yeah. That'd be a rolling backup. There's also a chop backup. 2, 3, 4. Yeah, and it's really, that's the role. If you hear Tait playing back there, the mandolin usually carries the chop, but whenever I'm playing with the mandolin player, when they're taking leads, I'll mostly try and do chop backup to fill that role. It's the snare drum, if you're thinking about a drum set. Bluegrass Band is just a big drum set. The bass player is playing the kick drum, the mandolin's playing the snare drum, boom, chop, boom, chop, boom, chop. And then the guitar is kind of like a little bit of both in the drums and cymbals, so is the banjo. That's why we don't have drummers most of the time. we're supposed to all be kind of playing drums. So whenever a mandolin takes the lead, you know, I try and take over the role of the snare drum a little bit. And whenever the guitar takes the lead, I try and make sure I'm playing more rolls and more open notes and chords and trying to fill out the soundscape. Yeah. Yes.
So when I'm just amazed that you can play with different musicians just filling in and popping in and out. Is there like a secret behind the scenes as to how you know whose turn's coming up next, or is it a preset count that y'all just are familiar with, or
Sure.
how does that work?
Well, so every song kind of has a song form, you know. Hot Cross Buns is a 4-phrase, 1-section tune. A lot of these fiddle tunes that we play are usually, there's an A part and a B part, and almost all fiddle tunes you play A, B, B. You play the A part twice and the B part twice, and then that's the form of the song, and then you pass it off. Yeah, feel free to jump in at any point, either of you guys too.
I like to, you'll see me a lot of times, I don't know most of the songs I'm playing, so I'll stare at the guitar player's hand, and then whatever he's reacting, then I'll react to whatever he's
So you watch
playing.
the hands. I thought,
Yeah.
like I noticed sometimes one of you like adjust the guitar a little bit, and I'm like, is that a signal? Is
Yeah,
that-
Sometimes it's eye contact too,
Yeah.
just like, oh, look over at this guy, it's your turn, you know, in a jam especially if it's not. But a lot of times too, if it's like this, we'll just go down the line and send it back around.
Yeah, and you know, kind of going back to this Nashville number system, you have your major scale. For each one of those scale tones, there's a chord that goes with it. They're called the diatonic chords. So it's like G, A minor, A minor, C, D, E minor, F sharp diminished, and then G. And most tunes in the bluegrass world only use 3 chords, the 1, 4, and 5. And so a lot of times you might hear somebody calling out 5, 4, you know, calling out the chords. And you know, even when they get more complicated, you know, usually you're only using about 4 of the chords out of a given scale for every tune. And after you learn X amount of tunes, you start to see the patterns, and it becomes intuitive after doing it, you know.
One of the reasons we use numbers is because I might be playing out of one shape. The mandolin and fiddle player, they don't use capos. So if I'm changing the key to a song by a capo, say we're going to A, and Adams and I would put a capo on and play out of a G shape. The mandolin doesn't, so we're all thinking in different letters at some point. So we use numbers so we're all on the same page. 5's always a 5.
Even if it's not a key.
So yeah, when the key changes, you have a whole new set of chords corresponding to those
Oh my
numbers.
God.
Yeah, you reset where your home base note
Yeah.
is. And yeah, so that moves
So
all the
music
chords.
theory is important.
So if the song's in the key of G, we would use 1 as G, but if the song's in the key of D, we'd use D as 1, and then build the numbers off of that
Oh,
letter.
yeah.
Yeah, as a new group, then you start from the new group, kind of corresponding from there.
I have a question. What makes you decide which roll pattern to use for the melody?
It has to do with kind of where the melody notes, where I'm choosing to play the melody notes on which string and which part of the neck, and the rhythm of the melody. You know, and a lot of times, if it's a tune, a jam tune, or if I'm sitting in, you know, I don't really have as much time to puzzle it out, so I have some stock stuff that I practiced for decades that I know how to go to. But when, you know, in my practicing, you know, I'll actually sit down and really kind of like map it out with some paper and go through and try different stuff. Because each roll pattern kind of has its own groove, its own kind of vibe to it, and so you can, as well as demonstrating hot cross buns, you can play it with different roll patterns. But you know, the difference between the mixed roll pattern is a very square pattern, and all the melody notes fall on the beat. And then the forward roll pattern has this kind of natural syncopation that sounds cool. So it's kind of like whether how if it's appropriate to kind of try and play a hip or syncopated rhythm, or if it's important.
Syncopated, for those of you who don't know, just means the beat is not on the downbeat, so it's a little bit on the and of the one. So if we're counting out a tune, it might be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and would be a syncopated beat.
So what does your practice session look like?
I really love practicing and pedagogy and kind of like the science of learning, and so I have a bunch of different strategies that I use, including turning on Netflix and mindlessly noodling for hours, which seems to be a lot of how I practice in these days. But a really structured one is I try and have a certain amount of time. Like if I'm going to practice for 30 minutes, I'll try and have 10 minutes of exercises where I'm just practicing scales or some new roll patterns or something, and then I'll try and do 10 minutes of learning a new tune, and then do 10 minutes of playing repertoire stuff that I already know, and just working on continuity and trying to get it smooth. Or if I'm practicing for now, just kind of trying to split it up into thirds. There's an interesting thing about how the brain retains information. When I was in college, I was like obsessive practicing, and I would just like try and practice one thing for like an hour. But it's like your brain stops concentrating on it after a while, and you are building muscle memory, but it's not super effective. There was a study done about how the best way to retain information. They're saying it's like in 7-minute blocks, and I would actually use a timer. And you would have like 3 things that I was to practice. It could be 1 exercise, 1 new song, and 1 lick, some kind of fancy lick. And I would just go through that, or I'd do like 5 minutes and practice that one thing for 5 minutes, go to the next thing for 5 minutes, go to the next thing for 5 minutes, and then repeat that cycle. So you're basically having to relearn it every time. Make your brain think of something else and then go back to it instead of just being in this one thing for so long. And so it's also, it helps with my concentration. I can usually practice a lot longer. If you go, 3 things you're practicing, and you go through that cycle twice, and then you practice 3 other things, go through the cycle twice, you're filling up an hour pretty quick. So those are probably the more responsible practice sessions that I have, more effective. Yes, in the back.
Yeah, so the roll patterns that you've shown us so far have all been in like 2 or 4. Could you demonstrate how you would do it in 3?
Yeah, and 3 is awesome because we have 3 fingers.
Right.
And so it makes it pretty easy. Let's just vamp on a G. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, just give me some chords. So yeah, a forward roll will just be like G. That would be playing quarter notes. Double. The other forward rolls. Backward roll. Mixed rolls are a little trickier because they're 4-note chords, so usually you don't quite use those as much in 3/4.
So you're doing something different to make the 3 finger pick pattern work out into groups of 4.
You're doing an extra
Correct.
bump or
Yes,
something.
that's what we were talking about with the syncopation earlier. I call it the hamburger hot dog. It's this kind of way to interpretate. It's a new word for today. Interpretate. It's a group of 3 is a hamburger, 3 syllables, and a hot dog is a 2-syllable word. So with forward roll patterns, if you're trying to squeeze it into a measure of 4, you do hamburger, hot dog, hamburger. And it's kind of an easier way to start digesting those rhythms, because in music we use numbers for so many different things. We use it for counting rhythms. We use it for chords. We use it for talking about melody. We use it when we're talking about finger numbers. Finger 1, finger 2, finger 3, finger 4, and then we have fret numbers. Fret 1, fret 2, fret 3, fret 4. So anytime I can find a different kind of language to identify a different part of music, I really try and lean into it. Save the numbers for things that I don't have an alternative for.
You get hungry while you practice?
He's so hungry.
Yes. I have breakfast under my chair. I can smell it. Yeah, this is funny. I've doing it so long I don't really think about the food aspect of it anymore. But it's always shocking with a new student. I just start saying it, not really thinking about it, and then I realize how ridiculous it sounds. You're like hamburger, hamburger, hot dog, hamburger, hamburger, hot dog. Because you can break that pattern up too, and it doesn't have to be hamburger, hamburger, hot dog. It could be hot dog, hamburger, hamburger. And then you can split up 8 notes into a few different patterns. And then you can cross the bar line, and I don't know. I mean, it's like the world of rhythm is a rich and deep and complex world that you can really, really dig deep into. Like tabla players in Indian classical music, they have these long forms and different subdivisions of beats. It's a pretty fun study. Bela Fleck has done a lot of music like that, and you can really go down a rabbit hole and find a lot of inspiration and creativity by starting to just only analyze rhythm. And that is kind of one of the fun things with banjo and some of the writing that I do is trying to think less in terms of melody and more in terms of rhythm. It's like, people often it's like, to me, a vibraphone and a banjo are very similar. It was pretty easy for me to transition between the two instruments because they're both rhythmic based instruments that you can incorporate melody into. You can kind of flip your brain over whether or not you're concentrating more on the rhythm or the melody aspect of it. So. Yeah, maybe we'll play another tune here and we can do a little more talking.
I got one more. I got a question.
Yes.
How do you choose where to put the capo and what shape to play depending on the song? You have all these different options. How do you decide which you would prefer to play on each tune?
Yeah, great question. The friendliest keys for banjo are G, the key of G, the key of D, and the key of C. We have these open position chords that are really comfortable that also can incorporate open strings. And so I usually, if it's not one of those 3 keys, whatever the closest key is to it, I'll capo up. So a way a capo works, you have these little clamps that clamp on the neck and essentially just shorten all of the strings the same amount. So right now I'm in the key of G. If I clamp this thing on the 2nd fret, I'm shortening all the strings by a whole step, and now I have the key of A. And so I'm still thinking in the key of G and making all my shapes for my 1 chord, 4 chord, and 5 chord. But I just have to, kind of reposition where I imagine my neck ending here instead of down here. But yeah, I'm just trying to stay close to one of those keys. And you can play in any key without a capo. You just have to play a lot of what's called a closed position chord, where you have all of the notes are fretted on the instrument and you can't use any of the open strings, which is fine to do, but one of the cool things about banjo is a lot of the open strings, getting these drum strings and a lot of the classic licks. This actually kind of leads into something else I want to talk about. Some of these banjo licks that Earl Scruggs kind of created, or at least made popular, that utilize a lot of these open strings. Maybe we'll play a tune so you guys can hear it, and then we'll talk about it. Let's do that old Foggy Mountain breakdown.
Yeah, there's 2 main styles of banjo. The Earl Scruggs style, he was the pioneer of bluegrass banjo and the 3-finger picking style. And then later on, as other banjo players developed off of what he started, they started playing in a more melodic style where they're playing all of the notes through the scale. So here's a little Earl Scruggs style demonstration.
1, 2, 3. Thanks. Yeah. So that was one of the OG banjo ripper tunes. You listen to Earl play it, it really burns it down. And so Earl Scruggs, if you don't know, is kind of the pioneer of bluegrass banjo. It's, 3-finger style. And he kind of came up with these certain licks that are really part of the foundation of bluegrass music. They call this the G lick. And it's just when you hear that, you're like, oh yeah, this is bluegrass. And he puts that lick in at the end of almost every phrase. And there's a lot of variations on G licks, and it developed into there's a lot of modern versions of it and stuff. But it's I feel like that lick is all bluegrass banjos started there. And then another real classic Earl lick is that one. Which is really exciting sound, but if someone was like, oh, sing that tune, how would you sing the melody to Foggy Mountain Breakdown? It's like there's not a real clear melody to it, but it's this really rhythmic drive with the way some of these left-hand techniques with the hammer on, and he slides, and hammer on. He created this banjo style that really emphasized that stuff and made exciting. Get your heart pumping. Yeah. Yes.
Can you talk about the claw hammer style of playing?
I can. So there's another style of banjo. It's really almost like playing a different instrument, and it's utilized more in folk music and this genre of music called old time music, which is adjacent to bluegrass music, but it's kind of like a different. They use a lot of the same instruments, but kind of a different set of etiquette rules on the way that things are played. There's less improvising in old time music. Anyways, but yeah, so claw hammer, you completely change your style here. You don't use picks, or there are such thing as claw hammer picks, or sometimes people will put a banjo pick on backwards, but I'm not very good at it, so I'll do my best to demonstrate it. But you have this basic stroke called the bum ditty stroke, and you get some of your notes by striking down with your fingernail. That's why you put a banjo pick on backwards. And then you have a brush stroke, where you're brushing the whole strings with the same finger, and then you pop the fifth string with your thumb. And so the bum ditty stroke is. It's in the name. And then, they kind of have their own set of ways they figure out how to play melody. Well, the thing is, when you hear these masters of the claw hammer, you wouldn't know that it sounds like they're using a pick or something, and they can pick out all the notes and make it super clean sounding. And there's some other techniques that I can't really do, drop thumbing. It's almost like playing another instrument. It's a whole different set of technique. I mean, the notes are in the same place, but yeah, the approach is kind of its own school. Yeah, and it's really great.
That's a great way though. I've never seen anybody break it down that well. Like, you know, I know that it looks like their hands almost in a fist.
It's confusing
and
to
they do
watch.
a lot more like rhythm on it, like pounding it.
Yeah, and because your hand a lot of times actually hits the head, you know.
Yeah.
And
Their banjos are always like real brown and lots of
yeah.
damage.
Yeah, and they do usually have a different type of banjo setup they'll use instead of a resonator banjo that has a shell on the back. It's open. They call them open back banjos. And a lot of times the neck actually has a little scoop. They won't have these top frets. They don't play up the neck quite as, it's not traditionally they don't play up the neck quite as much. And so a lot of their hand position is actually right up on the neck rather than a lot of bluegrass playing is back here close to the bridge. So it's, your band, and you set up the way your strings are, usually a little bit higher action, a little bit further away from the fretboard, so you have a little more room to get in there and aggressively play them.
Full on, more wrist action.
If anyone hasn't played a stringed instrument, usually the closer you get to the end point of the string, the brighter the tone. So if I'm playing right here, it's nice and warm sounding, but if I go back here, so the clawhammer guys like this warm tone here, and the bluegrass guys like this.
Yeah, that's actually something that's kind of fun too to talk about. When we talk about tone, we're just talking about the character of the sound. And a warm sound or a dark sound, not to try and get too lost in the weeds, but if you have a pitch and it actually is creating a sound wave, right? The string is vibrating up and down, and the way sound waves go, they're waves. And within one string, like my lowest string, is vibrating at one frequency, but also if you cut the string in half, there's another note buried in there that's that's an octave higher. And both of those notes are in that string, and those are called the harmonic series, and there's also another note in there that sounds like there and there. All of those notes are contained within this one note, and where you play your pick and how you attack your string, you can kind of draw out in those harmonics more, and a brighter tone emphasizes more of the higher harmonics, and you get that, versus a darker tone is more of the fundamental tone. And it's a little bit of a volume thing too, but that's why those notes sound different, because one of them incorporates more of the upper overtones. And so in banjo playing, we have two positions. We call it the X position when we're playing back by the bridge, and the Y position, you kind of move up to the neck. And the X position is really good for when you're playing leads. And then when you're playing back up, you kind of get up in these. And it leaves more room in the sonic field for the other instruments to stand out.
Adams, my son, had a question.
Yes.
He was curious if you could explain to him what a lick is.
A lick? That is a great question. So music is a language. It's its own language. And we've talked about the musical alphabet, but the alphabet itself is not a language. You use the different letters to create words, to create sentences, and that's what we talked about a little bit about the phrases. And so, in between the letters and the phrases, you have the words, and a lick is like a word. And so it's a collection of notes, like the lick is. And that's, when I hear that, I'm not thinking about each letter of that lick. I hear it as a whole thing. It's a word to me. When I'm teaching melodies or when I'm learning melodies, also, a lot of tunes have these three notes where you're walking back to your home bass notes involved as part of the phrase, even though that's not the whole phrase. In Hot Cross Buns, that's the whole phrase, but as you learn more complicated tunes, the phrases are longer, but they'll end with those three notes, and it's like that's the hot cross buns lick, you know, and so instead of having to remember those 3 notes individually, you just think of it as one thing. So, but yeah, licks is you know, there's whole books of licks that are essentially dictionaries, you know, and they're in different keys, and you know, each instrument kind of has its own category of licks, and there's like iconic licks, you know, that certain players do, and yeah, it's really fun, and that's, you know, I think one of the fun parts of bluegrass is getting into that language and learning the licks. This is part of my practice is, you know, I have books of licks where you transcribe them, you listen to recordings and you hear them, and you go back and you listen to that one section of that one song a million times and try and figure it out, and then you're incorporating new vocabulary words into your own language. So yeah, licks are words in the music language. I guess.
So let's say the song is like key of G, and you got a G, a C, and D. And it's your turn to take a break.
Yep.
Okay. So, like in bluegrass, I suppose you would go for the melody and that scale, right? Or is there like a spontaneous go for the 5 and, you know, like just work it your own style?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question.
Like we get a train wreck when we play. Like I'll take off the cheap keys and be like, no, you know, you've gone off the tracks here, and I have. You know, it's like, how do I get myself? Like maybe go for the 5 and then play around and then get back to like a G note.
Sure. This actually perfectly leads into one of the tunes I want to do. You'll see that Blue Ridge Mountain Home. This is a classic bluegrass tune in the repertoire, and we'll play through it first, and we'll kind of talk about that. Try and sing this one here. I'll take the open grade. Yeah, that's one really want to know the form of the tune, and know the chords. You know, it's just a 1-4-5 tune. Yeah, I think of it maybe. I try and think of them usually in four phrases. There's well-beaten paths on this old mountainside. So that's the first phrase. It's half G, half C, or A and D, or 1 and 4. We'll use numbers because I don't capable. So your first phrase: 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. Right? So that's your first phrase. Your second phrase is the 5 chord. 1, 2, 3, back to 1, 2, 3. Then you're halfway through the song. Right? And then the third phrase is a common move where it's the exact same as the first phrase. 1, 2, 3, 4. Guess what? Fourth phrase, same as the second phrase. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is a really nice, friendly jammer tune because it's very symmetrical in those chords. So you want to make sure that you're playing those chords the same way every time. And then when you're taking solos or playing licks, you want to make sure you're playing the right lick for the right chord at the right time. Yeah. So, you know, that G lick that we're talking about, you know, it's usually a punctuation lick. And a lot of times your licks, you want them to happen after the singing is done. Or, you know, when the soloist is taking a break, if they are playing their solo where they're imitating the melody and they'll leave a little bit of space and you can give them a little bit. It's a conversation, you know. The first person or the soloist says a sentence and then there's a break and then you go, yes, cool. And, you know, you kind of tying it together. So, you know, if I was singing, there's a well-beaten path on this old mountainside where I wandered when I was yeah. And if you're playing, you know, if you're playing the solo, Earl did have all these licks that weren't very melodic, but he was also really good. It's kind of like utilizing those licks to draw the melody out. You know, that opening break that I played is more or less what he plays.
One thing we just barely touched base on here is that for each of these chords, you mentioned this, but we just kind of breezed over it. For each of these chords, out of this scale that we have, there's 3 notes that we stack up for each of those chords to make that chord sound. So this one, it's a 1, 3, 5, not to be confused with the chords we're talking about, 1, 4, 5. So when we're playing for a melody, one thing I'm trying to keep in mind is trying to hear which of those melody notes. And this one, it's starts on the 3, down to the 1, and then as we get to the 4 chord, it lands on the 3 of that chord. So I'm always it comes down to there's just a 1, 3, or 5 for each chord, and I'm trying to listen for where the melody goes. And as you listen for that more, the more accurate you get to, oh, that's the 5 of that chord, or that's the 3 of that chord.
Yeah, it's definitely layers, you know. It's like understanding the melody and then understanding the harmony that goes underneath the melody, which in banjo world is pretty important because we're holding those chord shapes. And at first, you know, you kind of just have to learn them out of a book or have someone show them to you, you know, but eventually you develop your ear and it starts to become really obvious, you know, you can hear it just as clearly as I'm speaking to you, but yeah, until then, yeah, if, you know, just knowing the form of the tune, where the chords come, and making sure you're playing it the same way every time.
So when that next chord comes, you should be shooting for that note that harmonizes.
Correct. Yeah.
Well, do you have an example of maybe walking to the next chord, like with the melody, that kind of hints to where you're changing lines?
Yep, there are some musical cues that you kind of learn You know, it's usually common for tunes to start on their 1 chord, and then usually it's real common for the next change to be a 4 chord. And there's this, so we got 1 chord, 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's a few ways you can indicate if you're playing with somebody that doesn't know the tune. You either play this chord that's called the dominant chord. You know, when you hear that, most musicians will know that that all means the 4 chord's about to come up. So I'll show you, let's do it in Blue Ridge Mountain. 1, 2, 3. Or there's a walk-up version you do like this. You know, when you start to hear some of these cues, yeah, exactly. Yes. So there's kind of ways that you can help each other guide into some of the tunes. Yeah.
Just don't stop on the wrong note. You can always get to the right. Just keep it moving.
Yeah. Don't sit there well off
That's all right.
Everybody will know.
Get back on track.
A wrong note played once is a wrong note, but if you do it 2 or 3 times in a row, then it becomes a musical choice.
Oh, I like them.
Well, some people just don't have it.
Yeah, you incorporate those mistakes you might have made, flip, and then you're like, how can I make that work with what I was doing?
Oh, that sounded good. It's something new. I just made it up.
Exactly.
All right, well, we're kind of at an hour here. I think we'll play just a couple more tunes for y'all, and then if there's any more questions, we'll answer them. But Tom and I are in a band called Arkansas, and we just recorded an album in last November that will be coming out this year. But I'd like to play a couple of those tunes for you all right now. We'll have Tom sing one that he wrote. This tune is a waltz tune. It's in 3. So I'll be using a lot of forward rolls, probably.
This is a song about the time my wife left me at a Del McCurry concert. Just in time.
love it.
What's that called?
Goose feathers. Cool. Let's try that arch rubber with G minor too. This is the next tune we'll do here is one I wrote. I had the birth of my first child this June, and I'm a 44-year-old man, and you know, if you have kids, you know you kind of have one life before you have a kid, and then you have another life after you have a kid. And this song kind of came out when I was processing that transition. One, two, three. observations? Yes.
Off of the banjo, I'm curious how many instruments you all play, because I've seen you play a few.
Well, there's two parts to that question. There are how many instruments do I play, and how many instruments do I play well. You know, kind of with some of the stuff that we talked about, you know, with learning major scales and understanding how music theory works. You know, it's like once you kind of get a grasp on that, you can kind of pick up a lot of instruments and figure them out pretty quick. You find the scale and the notes. But as far as like instruments that I'll play in public, you know, banjo, guitar, mandolin a little bit. I've played piano since I was a little kid, and so that translates to the vibraphone, and that's, you know, and then I can noodle on a lot of other instruments.
And then he got a master's degree in it, so
Yeah.
that might help.
But yeah, I think in the bluegrass world it's pretty common to at least know your chords on a lot of the standard instruments, so you can participate in jams. And if there's like no mandolin players, you can pick up your trumpets and mandolins. I don't know, do you play more than just mandolin?
So I was very, very, very late to any kind of music and playing anything. I don't even think I knew what a mandolin was when I was 25 or so, and I was going to a lot of bluegrass festivals and was just soaking up all the music and then seeing all the fun everyone was having. I wanted to have some fun too. So I was about 7 or 8 years ago, picked up mandolin, first instrument, and kind of just put my head down and stayed in my room for a couple of years, and then played in a lot of bands I shouldn't have been playing in, and just getting in with people that are better than you. That's the best way to kind of pick it up. And then I don't know how to play guitar, but I watched a lot of the guitar shapes and learned those to kind of help me out for playing tunes and stuff like that.
And how many hours did you have to practice?
Well, I'm kind of obsessive on some stuff, and
I understand that.
this has been the longest, most consistent thing of my life, and I don't see it ever gonna not be part of it. Yeah.
So more than 8 hours.
Yeah, and it's
8
very
hours a day.
sporadic. You know, it might be 20 minutes here, 20 minutes there, and then you get into a jam circle. Then you put your head up, and 5 hours has gone by, and like, oh gosh, I gotta go to bed.
Or 4 days.
Or the sun is rising.
Yeah, that's been a few
Just
of
like
those.
this, that's how was your fastest hour.
Yeah.
What about Tom?
Well, of course I play bass a lot, but I play guitar probably more than I play bass just at my house. And then I've done some like deep dives, like 5-year little obsession with like pedal steel. And for like, I work on instruments and do repairs and setups, and so for about a decade I was a banjo technician.
You started on
He can play
drums.
some banjo, I've heard.
I can play a little bit of banjo, but I've worked on them so much that I was like, I ended up knowing all the good banjo players in the area, and then I was like, well, I'll play a different instrument for the band. But you know, bluegrass is kind of, as Bill Monroe imagined it, is several different instruments, and they all kind of have a role. There's chores to do. So as kind of Adams mentioned, while the mandolin player is kind of hitting this as I'm playing, and he's playing a chop, keeps the rhythm going. So there's boom chuck, boom chuck, boom chuck, and as that chuck goes away for the melody playing and the lick playing that the mandolin's doing, then other instruments jump in to fill that role. Sometimes banjo, sometimes if you hear a fiddle going those real short chops, and dobros do that really well.
Cool. Well, thanks everybody for coming out.
Thank
you.
you.
Maybe play one more tune here to send you off, and enjoy the rest of your festival. And we'll be around. Maybe we got one to end on there, Tom.
We can do Soldier Joy.
Sure.
I was going down left.
Yeah. Let's do Soldier's Joy. You know that one? Yes.
Good answer.
And then the face.
Here's the headlights.
This one goes back to the Civil War days, or pre-Civil War.
You want to kick it off?
Sure, I'll kick it off.